You'd think a rare personality would stand out loudly. But the rarest types are usually the quiet ones you would never suspect. Here are 7 quiet signs you might be one of them. Because the loudest person in the room is almost never the rarest one. They're just the most visible. Rarity, in psychology, tends to hide. It hides inside habits that look ordinary from the outside. It hides inside people who assume everyone thinks the way they do. It hides inside the ones who spent years feeling slightly out of step with the world and quietly assumed something was wrong with them. Nothing was wrong with them. They were just built differently. And when researchers study the traits that actually make a personality statistically rare, something strange shows up. The signs are almost never dramatic. They're small. They're internal. They're the kind of thing you'd never mention at a dinner party because you assume everyone experiences it too. They don't. And once you see these 7 signs laid out clearly, you may recognize yourself in a way you weren't expecting. Let's start with the first one because it's the sign most people carry their whole lives without ever naming. Sign 1. You feel like a stranger in almost every group, even the ones you technically belong to. You can be surrounded by good people, laughing at the right moments, saying the right things, and still feel like you're watching the room from a slight distance. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a low sense of belongingness fit, and it shows up strongly in people whose inner world runs on a different frequency than the average group. Your brain is quietly processing more layers than the conversation requires. Subtext, mood, contradictions, motives, the things someone almost said and didn't, so a part of you never fully lands in the surface chatter. From the outside, this looks like aloofness or shyness. From the inside, it's the opposite. You're not detached. You're absorbing everything at once, and there's simply no bandwidth left to also perform belonging on top of it. The strange thing is this feeling doesn't go away when the group is objectively your people. Even among friends who love you, a quiet part of you is still slightly outside the frame, cataloging. That's not a flaw. That's the price of a mind that refuses to run on autopilot. And once you understand that, the next sign will make even more sense. Sign 2. Silence doesn't scare you the way it scares most people. In a culture addicted to noise, notifications, and constant stimulation, the rarest personalities tend to have an unusually high tolerance for stillness. Research on introversion, deep processing, and what psychologists call need for cognition consistently finds that some minds actually generate energy from quiet rather than losing it. Your nervous system doesn't panic when there's nothing to react to, it exhales. That's when your best thinking arrives. In the shower, on a long walk, driving with the radio off, staring at a ceiling most people would call boring. You've probably solved half the important problems of your life in moments other people would try to fill with a podcast. What looks like withdrawal from the outside is actually the exact environment your mind needs to do its real work. Silence, for you, isn't emptiness. It's the workshop. And that workshop, as you'll see next, produces a kind of perception most people never quite notice. Sign 3. You notice details other people walk right past. The micro shift in someone's tone. The word they almost said and swallowed. The mismatch between what a person's mouth is doing and what their eyes are doing. The way a room's mood changes the second a certain name is mentioned. Psychologists call this heightened pattern recognition, or thin slicing. The ability to read a huge amount from a tiny slice of behavior. It's one of the most consistent markers of a mind that runs deeper than average. The strange part is that you often don't realize you're doing it. You just get a feeling about people, situations, rooms, and then, 6 months later, that feeling turns out to have been accurate in a way that almost unnerves you. From the outside, this can look like overthinking or being suspicious or reading too much into things. It isn't. It's high-resolution perception in a world that mostly runs on low resolution. Most people are seeing a pixelated version of reality. You're seeing the full image. And that full image comes with a cost, which brings us to the next sign. Sign 4. You get tired in ways that don't match what you actually did. You had coffee with one person. You answered a few messages. You went to a small gathering for 2 hours. And somehow, you come home feeling like you ran a marathon in your head, and you need the rest of the evening to yourself just to feel human again. This isn't weakness. It's the tax on a deeply processing mind. Researchers studying high sensitivity and deep cognitive processing, including work associated with psychologist Elaine Aron, describe a nervous system that takes in more information per moment and processes it more thoroughly. More input, more processing, more energy burned. Even when nothing looked especially demanding from the outside, you weren't just at coffee. You were reading tone, tracking mood, catching the subtext, noticing what wasn't being said, feeling the emotional temperature shift when the barista dropped a cup. You were doing 5 conversations at once, and only one of them was out loud. From the outside, it looks like you can't handle much. From the inside, you handled 10 times more than anyone noticed, and you did it silently, which sets up the sign most people misread the hardest. Sign 5. You'd rather be misunderstood than perform a version of yourself you don't believe in. Most people will tweak, soften, exaggerate, or shapeshift a little to be liked. It's normal social lubricant, and there's nothing wrong with it. But there's a rare type of person who has a quiet, almost stubborn line inside them, a point past which they simply will not perform. If a group wants a personality they don't have, they'd rather stay quiet and be misjudged than fake it and be accepted. Psychologists studying identity development and what's sometimes called integrated self-concept find that this trait shows up in people with an unusually stable inner sense of who they are. The reward of being liked for a version of yourself that isn't real doesn't register as a reward for you. It registers as a small, private loss. From the outside, this can look like arrogance or coldness or being hard to read. People sometimes call you intimidating and you have no idea why, because inside you feel like the least intimidating person alive. What they're actually picking up on isn't hostility, it's the absence of a performance they were expecting you to give. And that refusal to perform is closely tied to the next sign, which is one of the deepest on this list. Sign 6. You have a strange private relationship with meaning. Small talk drains you not because you're rude or above it, but because your mind is quietly hungry for something with more weight. You'll politely discuss the weather, but a part of you is already wondering what this person is actually afraid of, what they love, what they'd say if the social script were suddenly removed. You find yourself pulled toward the questions people usually avoid. What a life is actually for, why people behave the way they do, what makes something matter, whether the way we're all living is really the way we should be living. This lines up with what psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski described as intellectual and emotional overexcitabilities, and with a broader body of research on what's sometimes called meaning orientation, the tendency to organize your life around depth rather than comfort. Your mind is essentially always scanning for signal in the noise. You've probably had the strange experience of being at a perfectly nice event and feeling a low, quiet ache. Not sadness exactly, but a sense that you're spending an hour of your finite life on a conversation that isn't quite reaching you. From the outside, this can look like being too serious, or too much, or not knowing how to relax. From the inside, it's the exact opposite. It's the part of you that refuses to sleepwalk through your own life. And that refusal shapes the final sign, the one most people miss entirely. Sign 7. You're rarely the loudest voice, but somehow you're the one people quietly bring their real problems to. Not the service complaints, the real ones. The 2 a.m. thoughts, the doubts they haven't told anyone else. Confessions they didn't plan to make until they were already sitting across from you. You've probably noticed a pattern. Strangers on planes, coworkers you barely know, friends of friends at gatherings. They'll talk to you for 10 minutes and suddenly tell you something they haven't told the people closest to them. And you'll go home slightly puzzled, wondering why that keeps happening. This isn't an accident. Research on interpersonal attunement, active listening, and emotional intelligence consistently finds that certain minds create a specific kind of safety in other people. The sense that they can put something heavy down and it won't be judged, gossiped about, or turned into a story later. You didn't train for this, you didn't try to become that person. You just happen to be the rare kind of listener who can hold complexity without flinching and who doesn't need to make the conversation about themselves. From the outside, it looks like you're just easy to talk to. From the inside, you're doing something most people can't. You're being fully present without an agenda. You're not waiting for your turn to speak. You're not mentally rehearsing advice. You're just there. And that, more than anything else on this list, is what quietly marks a rare personality. Now step back and look at these 7 signs together, because the pattern is more revealing than any single trait. Notice how consistently each one gets misread by the outside world. The distance is read as coldness. The stillness is read as boredom. The perception is read as overthinking. The tiredness is read as fragility. The refusal to perform is read as arrogance. The hunger for meaning is read as being too intense. The deep listening is read as being merely nice. Every single one of these traits is a strength wearing the disguise of a weakness. And that disguise is exactly why these personalities are so rare, because most people over time get talked out of them. They get told to speak up more, to care less, to lighten up, to stop being so sensitive, to stop asking such big questions, to stop reading into things. And a lot of people understandably comply. They file down the parts of themselves the world didn't know how to hold, and something rare quietly disappears. But if you're still watching this, still nodding, still recognizing yourself in more of these than you expected, there's a good chance you didn't file yours down. You just learned to carry it quietly. And that quiet carrying is the whole point. Rare personalities almost never announce themselves. They don't come with a label. They live inside the person who thinks they're the strange one, when in fact they're the signal in a very noisy room. The strangest thing about being this kind of person is that you often can't see it in yourself. You assume everyone notices what you notice, feels what you feel, thinks the way you feel, thinks the way you think. So when the world reflects back that you're different, or too much, or hard to read, you assume the problem is you, not the resolution difference between you and the room. It isn't. You are simply built on a slightly different frequency, and the world is mostly tuned to a different station. If any of this landed a little too close to home, I'd genuinely love to know which of the 7 felt most like you. I read every reply, and honestly, the patterns in the comments are usually more revealing than the video itself. If you want to keep decoding this, the video I'd send you to next is the one on why deeply thoughtful people often feel lonely even when they're loved. It pairs directly with what we just unpacked here. And if this is your first time here, this is what I do on this channel. I decode one hidden pattern of the mind each week, calmly and honestly, without the usual noise. Subscribing and turning on notifications is the only way YouTube will actually show you the next one. Because the rarest people in the world aren't the ones who stand out. They're the ones who finally realize they were never supposed to blend in.